Greetings, chums. Just gotten back from an exhilarating match of doubles with the Chads, and we're here to bring you another episode. Here on the Chad Tree Surgeon channel, we cover the finer things in life aboard our Ducati as we sip fine rosé and what am I doing? What am I doing? What have I become? What's happened to me? Who am I? Lo and behold, this epic tragedy of masculinity lost. A victim of the times, a victim of his own hubris. He seeks to kill that which makes him, he, his. I becomes the it, becomes the id. And its voice joins the slavering, screeching chorus of a society who would see its creators and champions drugged through the streets, gentled, neutered, pacified. Kill, kill, kill! Kill that what makes it him. The many grasping hands of those who revel in meekness push its hand toward his own heart. Snuff it out. Deliver the killing blow, they whisper. Faced with annihilation through indolence, the last vestiges of our masculinity stare into the inky black depths of the void, and something stares back. What rough beast slouches forth? Its hour come round at last. We cry for salvation, but we do not receive a savior. What breaks free from the womb of our collective base is no shining savior, but is rather a dark arbiter. It strides forth inexorable, with a rictus grin and a pitiless gaze to breathe life into the flame we tried to extinguish. It has come to lay waste to this abominable celebration of homogeny and remind him of what he once was and will always be. In this ancient and weary machine of death beats three hearts, and they bellow with a common voice the proclamations of a man reborn. Kill, kill, kill! Kill that what makes him it! Sound the horn that will topple those walls the meek would build to hide us from sight. Ride forth on this ancient sneering machine, this contraption cobbled together from base desires and unadulterated instinct. Let this be the blade that pierces the veil of self-induced mediocrity. Behold the triumph of man, and name it thusly! Ozymandias, King of Kings, look upon my work, so ye mighty, and despair.
Well, it's back. Now we get the sound of two triples. Oh, it feels good to sit on this bike again. It almost doesn't feel real to be back on this motorcycle. And the fact that it's changed so much, that it's so different. I mean, it's literally, it not only looks like a brand new bike, but since it's got all new components on it, it feels like a brand new bike. So we got new Speedo that says 392 miles, and it feels brand new, even though I think it had like between 50 and 60,000 miles when I dropped it off at the shop. It's just insane how different this bike feels from the Ducati. I mean, on the surface, the differences are obvious. I mean, this is a 850-pound mega cruiser the size of a battleship, and the Ducati is a touring bike that's actually light even for a touring motorcycle, but with a super sport engine. And trust me, the Ducati with, 150 some horsepower, close to 100 foot-pounds of torque, I think. I mean, that thing is lightning fast. It's no slouch. It'll scare the hell out of you. But on this rocket, which makes much more horsepower than the Ducati and gobs more torque. I think this thing's sitting at almost 170 some foot-pounds of torque with all the mods that are done to it. This thing just feels barely restrained. It just feels like massive amounts of power roiling beneath the surface, like some sort of sperm whale barely breaching the surface of the ocean. It's just ready to explode at any moment. And next to the Ducati feels homogenized next to this bike. This bike feels raw and dangerous. It's hard to explain. It's more of a feeling, because probably to over 100 miles an hour, the Ducati is probably faster than this bike. But when you twist open the throttle on this Rocket 3, it feels like the world is ripping apart at the seams. Whereas the Ducati merely accelerates down the road when you twist the throttle, the Rocket 3 fucking explodes. It explodes when you twist the throttle, and it doesn't seem possible that something this massive could have that sort of arm-ripping acceleration. It just blows your mind. It's like drag racing a Mack truck, and the power never ends. There is no flat spot. There is no torque curve. Torque curve? This bike is the embodiment of torque. And there is nothing else like this bike on the road. Truly, this Rocket 3 lives up to its name more than any other. Ozymandias, King of Kings. There's nothing like it on the road, baby. It just feels dangerous. This bike reminds me, if you guys have seen my videos, you'll know that one of the reasons I was inspired to ride was the movie Akira. I saw that when I was a kid, and the motorcycles in it just made me know that I was going to ride one day. When they all rode sport bikes, but I always was fond of the clown gang, those guys who were on the crazy cruisers in the beginning sequence of Akira. And the head dude, the main guy, that badass on that giant motherfucking motorcycle rolling down the road with his arms crossed. That's what I feel like on this Rocket 3. That's what it fucking feels like. So now that I've had the chance to wax poetic about the mighty Rocket 3 for a moment, I'm sure there's at least a few of you watching this right now who are kind of confused. You're going, where the hell did this bike come from? And how did this motherfucker who's been riding around a KTM 300 and a Ducati Multistrada, how did he end up on a Triumph Rocket 3? And it stands to reason, if you've subscribed in the past year and a half and you haven't watched any of my old videos, you'll have no idea that I even owned this motorcycle. But this is the motorcycle that I started my YouTube channel with. And yeah, I had it for years before I started my YouTube channel, but anybody who knows me through YouTube, who's been with me since the beginning, when they say Shade Tree Surgeon, they think of the Rocket 3. Well, you guys who have been with me since then will also remember that I actually broke the shifter shaft on this Rocket 3 inside the transmission. And I did that because I had broken my foot on the KTM, and I was riding this thing around with my big stupid walking boot after my broken foot, stomping on the transmission over and over again, and with never even a thought of that I might possibly break it. And I guess I was hitting it so hard, and I didn't even know with my boot that I broke it. And unfortunately, it necessitated the motor to be pulled out of the bike and the cases to be split to replace it. All this work was done by my very good friends at the Ride Factory. This bike would not exist. This bike would not be possible without their dedication and their hard work, and I'm about to go into that right now. You see, the reason I haven't had it in so long is actually an incredibly tragic one, because the man who was working on this bike, more than just a tech, a great friend of mine, a guy named Scotty Kemper, he was the one taking the engine apart, and he had the engine completely out of the bike and completely in a million pieces. And he was literally about to start putting it back together. It had only been a couple months. And very tragically, that night he actually died in a motorcycle accident. And you guys remember that? Losing Scotty was just not only a huge blow for me, but a huge blow for Tampa and the Ride Factory and just the motorcycle community in general. Scott was an absolutely amazing human being who always had a smile for a stranger and just one of the best guys out, in addition to being an absolutely brilliant technician. And I'll tell you, some people might feel different, but the fact that the Rocket 3 was completely apart after Scott passed away, this bike was the least of my worries. But still, there it's sad. It was completely taken apart by somebody who is no longer with us, and the rest of the techs at the Ride Factory, which is a Harley shop. They don't specialize in Triumphs, they specialize in Harley Davidson. The rest of the guys there were left with a puzzle that somebody else had created. Scott knew how everything went back together because he took it apart, and everybody else had to kind of guess how the whole thing went back together. And let me tell you, nobody in the Southeast, they called every Triumph dealership and they've been to so many people. Nobody else, even in the Southeast of America, had ever had the engine as far down as they had it in their shop. So putting it back together was an absolute nightmare for them. But that's what I owe to Brian, because Brian persevered. He went through this bike, and he was so immaculate. I mean, his attention to detail was so perfect because he was doing something that he didn't know how to do, but he wasn't about to give me back a motorcycle that was in any way substandard to a bike that the most experienced Triumph technician put back together. So he took his time, he made phone calls, he created relationships with Triumph dealers and Triumph technicians, not just in America, but around the world, putting this motor back together and doing it right. And for that, I owe him a huge debt of gratitude. Brian is an amazing person, and he's the reason that I'm sitting on this bike today. So a small project, even though, pulling the motor is not a small project, turned into a total rebuild. I figured if the engine was out of the bike and this motorcycle was completely stripped down to the frame, you might as well rebuild everything, replace all the bearings, completely paint everything, powder coat it, and just basically make this thing a brand new motorcycle. And that it is. This is a brand new bike. This bike has been through a lot. It's got a lot of stories to tell. Not all of them are good. A lot of them are sad, but nobody's stories are all good. It's been with me through a lot. It's seen a lot of things, and I have it back now. And I will tell you, I can't wait to create more stories on this motorcycle. It's already the thing of legend for me. I'm not saying that for you, but for me, this bike is already an object of legend. It's been through so much, and it's been in so many stories and been the focal point of so many people's lives. And now I have it back, and the story continues. And at this point, I wouldn't even call it a story anymore. This is now the saga of the Rocket 3.